Good morning, all. Wild Weather here for LiveWeatherBlogs.com, and here's a look at Tropical Storm Isaac this morning. Much better organized this morning as he moves off to the west here toward the island of Guadalupe, which is right there. And looks like all systems go for a steady strengthening over the next day or two as it moves off to the west in this general direction. Now down the road, we're going to start wondering how Hispaniola here is going to affect the circulation of Isaac as he moves off to the west, and in time it starts making a more of a northerly turn, perhaps. And we'll take a look at that in models in a moment. Talk about the models. Let's go. This is experimental forecast tropical cyclone genesis potential fields, and let's take a look at the models here one by one. This is the Canadian model here, and the Canadian model initiates right here. This model would be the one that's a little bit further to the right, a little too far to the right, I think. But you can see it comes across Hispaniola, up across the Bahamas, and this would cause the Outer Banks and North Carolina to be in ground zero. As you can see, the ridge of high pressure is much further to the east out here, steering the hurricane Isaac toward the North Carolina coast. This would be a huge problem if this were to verify for North Carolina. But that's not the only model available to us. Let's take a look here. This is the Euro model. Let's go to the Euro operational model here. And as we put this into motion, it paints a much different scenario than the Canadian model. Keeps Isaac relatively weak, scrapes by some of the islands here in the south, and then emerges out here in the central Gulf of Mexico. Later in the period, the Euro wants to bring it up in this general direction, causing New Orleans to be in. So you can see there's quite a spread between the Canadian model and the Canadian model coming up toward North Carolina, and the Euro model bringing it up through the Yucatan Channel into the central Gulf of Mexico. Now, with that said, let's take a look at the GFS. The GFS seems to be right in the middle of the two models. However, the GFS would cause Florida to really be in the crosshairs here. This is a 6Z run this morning across the Florida Straits, and then it really starts ramping up, intensifying as it moves up the west coast of Florida. If this model were to be correct, we'd be looking at a quite a bit of it'd be pretty bad there for Tampa Bay come up next week, Wednesday, Thursday time period. So as you can see, the ridge of high pressure elongates a little bit further to the west, much further to the west than, say, the Canadian model, and the weakness opens up. And most likely, this model would probably take Isaac up the west coast of Florida and then kind of up in this rate, in this fashion. Um, you're in Florida, you definitely want to keep aware. Florida in most models, with the exception of the Euro model out here and the Canadian model out here, this seems to be the middle point of the track at this point. There is one other model I want to take a look at this morning. It's a GFDL model. Really gives you an idea of the intensification of Isaac. Here he comes here across the islands and up the east coast of Florida. You can see here, if you look at the closer, you can see the kind of ragged out first here, crosses the islands pretty quickly, and then up the east coast. This is right off of Daytona Beach here, come next week. So from there, one would assume that it would continue its trek up this way. So we have lots to look at here at LiveWeatherBlogs.com today, but Isaac is definitely going to be the talk of the town here the next couple of days. If this model GFDL is correct, it would spend very minimal time. It would cross over Hispaniola, the most mountainous part, but it would keep on moving, causing it to be disrupted and then to re-intensify as it moves through the Bahamas. So time will tell. At this time, the model to me that's been most consistent, although it's going back and forth maybe 50 to 100 miles, is GFS. GFS right here keeping Isaac weak a little bit, and then into the Gulf of Mexico, up the west coast of Florida. We'll wait and see. It's all going to be the steering mechanism right here, this ridge of high pressure, which has been keeping things moving along to the west here, is going to be the kicker. I just don't the euro all the way over here. I just don't know how much of this ridge of high pressure is really going to undercut this far west. With the pattern that we've been seeing with the northwesterly flow plowing into the western Gulf of Mexico. For right now, the GFS and to some degree even the GFDL to me seems a little bit more reasonable. And I think that the Canadian model is just a little bit too far right. That's all I have for today, folks. Just one last look at Isaac. Isaac with 45 mile per hour winds at 15.7 north, 58.4 west. Maximum winds are 45, west at 18, 1,004 millibars. Look for Isaac to continue to strengthening today. Probably as the time it gets to Guadalupe, probably looking at a 50 to 60 mile per hour tropical storm, and probably becoming a hurricane in this general location here in the next 24 to 36 hours. This is Live Weather Blogs, Wild Weather, and keep it tuned here to to liveweatherblogs.com for further updates.